Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Gosh, that looks awful. Maybe a shoulder.
Kia ora tātou. I can see there's lots of talk and banter going on around the room, but be nice if we start on time, I think. So, kia ora tātou. So, welcome to the Strategy, Finance and Risk Committee meeting for Monday, the 18th of September. For those of you zooming in or at the back there in the gallery, Commissioner Antoli and Chair of this committee can't be here physically, but is online. So we've got a big screen here, and we can see you there. That's why, as Deputy Chair, I'm sitting in today to chair this week. In terms of, we've got a bit of housekeeping, health and safety. If the alarm sounds, please make your way to the nearest exit, emergency exit. The assembly point is across the road from this building in that direction. Please be aware that this meeting is being live streamed and the video will be publicly available on YouTube. Members, can I please ask to speak clearly into your microphones and only one speaker at a time for clarity, please. And we'll take this time to ask, please, politely, if everyone can turn their mobile phones off. So, thank you. We will open with karakia. Thank you, Shad.
Morena tātou. Tuatahi ake ka tuku mihi kia koera Wayne. I whakawhare nei tēnei o tō tātou nei hui, nō reira tēnā koe. Huri ake rā kia tātou i ngā mema o tēnei taumata. I ata whiriwhiri hia nei rā i ngā āhuatanga, nō reira tēnā koutou. Huri ake rā ngā whakaro kia rātou kua mene nei te pō. Kia tangi hia rā tātou kia rātou, nō reira ngā mate haere atura. Kia tātou te hongora, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou. Just want to acknowledge you, Wayne, for chairing our meeting this morning, but also all the members from our committee. It's probably been a long time since we've had a full house, so great to see everybody here. And also acknowledging those that of our whānau, particularly those that recently passed, and we just acknowledged them. So I'll just open with a short karakia. Nō reira, kia nui tātou. E te atua anei rā mātou e huitahi nei, ka tuku wenei reo whakamuamiti, wenei reo whakawhetai ki a koe. Arehina mai a tātou I roto I nei mahi, kia whaihua rahi tika. Mā tātou, me kira mo te hāpuri whānui. Nō reire te atua tēnei mā tūne ki a koe, kore ki tō ngā tapu. Āmeni.
Look, we'll move on to item 2, which has just been said. We've got a full house, which is wonderful. So no apologies there. Item 3, public forum.
Excuse me, Wayne, can
Yes.
I just note that I do need to be away by 2:45 in case we are still meeting. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Bruce. I think we'll have an order. We should be on time, I think, for your next meeting, Bruce. That's great. Public forum, there is nothing received. No, thank you very much. Acceptance of late items. None that we have received. Thank you. Yep, thank you, Stephen. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. Thank you. Go on to item 5. We've got confidential business to be transferred into the open. And again, moving fairly quickly, nothing received, so thank you very much. Item 6, changed to order of business.
Not at this stage.
Okay, yeah. I'll just, not at this stage, but later in the meeting, something, we're aware that we might have to change order, but we'll play that as the meeting goes. So at this stage, there is no change of order of business. Thank you. Item 7 is confirmation of minutes. Now, these refer to the committee meeting minutes of 7 August 2023. I'll take it as read, those minutes. Can I? Thank you, Bruce. Move. Have I got a seconder? Thank you. Any comments there? No. So can we please, all those in favour that they are accepted as true and accurate? Thank you. Those against? That's carried. Thank you. Declaration of conflict of interest, item 8. Here we go. We've got a few hands raised.
Yes, Morena.
Yes, Morena.
I have a conflict with 9.9 for the revised community funding policy. I am a submitter.
Thank you. Thank you, Matiri. Yep.
Sorry, and just to note in the discussion about urban growth, there is a commentary in there about RM reform. I'm still participating in some of the reform processes, although it doesn't necessarily directly impact on that particular item, but I just want it noted.
Thank you, Shad.
Hilda Wayne, yeah, that's for me too. Anything in relation to RMA reforms. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. We've noted those. No one else? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so on to item 9, which is business. And can we start with 9.1, please? That's the interim 2022-23 interim audit report. Morena.
Morena.
Morning, I'm Sheree Cavell and this is Maren Gabrick. This is our opportunity to bring to you the results of the Audit New Zealand interim audit report for the 2023 financial year. Audit were here in July to conduct the interim audit, and that mainly focuses on the control environment, council systems, policies and processes. Where possible, it's also an opportunity to clear any outstanding management points from previous years. So during this interim audit, 11 of the 24 outstanding items were reviewed and 6 of these were cleared. The 5 not cleared have been prioritised by the business to address during the final audit, which is currently underway. These 5 items sit across finance, HR and risk. There was one new item added, which relates to annual fraud risk assessments, and the risk team are already addressing this with audit and hope to have this cleared during the final. The remaining previous year matters are also included in the attached audit report, and we're comfortable that the majority of these will be cleared or resolved by the business during this final. So Maren and I are here to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for the report. I'll open up for questions. Anybody? Bruce and then Bill.
Right. Thank you for your comments. And it was just, you've actually clarified my question, which was on 2.1 with formal fraud assessment. Actually, Mr. Chair, it's interesting to me. I'm not certain that we'd normally do a formal fraud assessment every year, but I might be thinking of something different that they perhaps haven't explained. And my question really is, so the way I read this report on page 43 of our agenda, it looked like we were saying to the auditors, thank you, but no thank you, because we are already doing fraud risk assessments, but you're indicating that we're doing more anyway. Is that right?
We anticipated this question and we have John here to answer that.
Well done, you.
Kia ora, yes. We thought we were doing as much as we could do, but obviously we need to raise the awareness at the exec and to bring that forward and make sure that it's all minuted as well.
Thanks, John. I mean, I appreciate it. When it comes to next month, is it the 30th or something, we look at the annual report, we're all going to have to recommend that Ian signs a letter of rep. We all need to be aware of all this stuff anyway, so it's not a bad thing to have done. John, it may be you, it may not be. The only other question I had was in relationship to, gee whiz, what page is it? It's page 45, I think. The first point about a necessary change, which was payroll users with privilege access. It seemed like potentially, again, this was an area where we were slightly at odds with our auditor. I just wonder if there was any comment any of you folk could make for me, please.
Yeah, when audit looked at this, they talked to digital about it, but it actually was a HR issue, and HR have addressed it. And we think it's as tight as it's going to be with the amount of log-ons that we've got. So they review it every month, make sure that whoever has a log-on is only the right people to have HR sort of that access. So I think there was a little bit of a skew from audit asking the wrong people the wrong questions. So HR onto it, and they're pretty well confident that they've got it sort of nailed.
Look, that's good, and I mean, presumably at the final audit, well, probably it's probably final audit time now. They will talk to the right people, because I think the thing I'm looking for is that the control issues such as self-review, lack of segregation of duties is avoided. And John, you'll know well what I'm after there, and I will be keen to see that. Take your point. If they haven't talked to the right people, I'm sure it will solve. Wayne, I only had one other question, which I very briefly said to Paul, was where are we at with the actual audit? But that you may want to answer that after we've dealt with the report. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, now.
Thank you. So 2 audits are actually happening concurrently at the moment. So we've got both the LTP consultation document audit and the annual report audit. So the team, Audit New Zealand, have been on site for the last fortnight, working predominantly on the annual report, but also planning around LTP. At this stage, my conversation with their audit supervisor on Thursday was that things are going well and there was nothing being highlighted of any concern. They've got a fairly new team on site, so just I guess a shout out to Audit New Zealand that they've had their supervisors in quite a bit as well, just to make sure that transition goes smoothly.
Paul, the thing I'm always interested in is actually at the sort of the big transaction, we aren't a simple council, and some of the disclosures and estimates that go and judgments that go around our disclosures are challenging, probably compared to some of the average audits. And I'd be keen to know ultimately that we are, probably because it's a joint thing, on top of those sorts of any of those accounting presentational issues.
Yeah, we're doing what we've done in past years, where we have those more complex transactions to have the conversation with Wellington, as well as local audit as well, because they are reviewed nationally as well. So, that has worked well in the past.
Thanks, Paul. Appreciate that. Thanks, Wayne.
Bruce?
Bill? Thanks, Chair. And it's just picking up the matter where there are still a number of matters that haven't been closed. You noted in the report that, and there are quite a number to be updated during the final audit visit. Do I assume from that as a result of that audit visit discussions, that
most, if not all of those matters will be completed, just that some of them go back to 2017 or 18, and just picking up what one appears to me straightforward one, documenting the process for cancelling and destroying P cards, etc. And I know there's something coming according to the report to us in September. So I just wanted a bit of commentary around all of those matters that are being dealt with through the audit visit.
Two parts to the answer. One is during the interim, they didn't have the resource to look at all of the outstanding items. So we've done a lot of work on the majority of these where we think that they would have been cleared if they were looked at during the interim. So we're comfortable that a lot of them will be cleared during the final, and that includes all the historic ones as well.
I look forward to seeing the final document, Chair.
Further questions at all? Right, Stephen?
Happy to move the recommendations as they stand and underscore Bill's comments. If he hadn't asked the question, I was going to. It would be good to have those cleared, and it's great to have that commitment that we will see that. So given that, I'm happy to move the recommendations.
Very much. Second, and Bill to second, thank you very much. Any further discussion on that? No? Good, thank you. So the motion is that the Strategy Finance Risk Committee, we receive the report of 2023 interim audit report, that we note the recommendations contained within the report to Council by Audit New Zealand, including recommendations from the previous audit, and notes that management responses and support ongoing implementation of improvements as required. So all those in favour, please say aye. Those against? Carried. Thank you very much. Moves us on to item 9.2, which was a Treasury policy review. Please, I think we've got, no, here we go. We've got a change of personnel. Thank you.
Hi again. I've also got Catherine here to support with any questions you might have on this, but I'll just give my little spiel. So this is the triennial Treasury policy review. The purpose of the Treasury policy is to ensure prudent investment and borrowing. It also ensures that we adhere to the Local Government Act, specifically the incorporation of the liability management policy and investment policies which are required within the Act. It also ensures that we measure and meet key metrics within the Act. Probably most important at the moment is the debt to revenue ratio, and also some prudence measures such as interest cover. So for this review, we worked with Bancorp, who are our Treasury advisors, and you've heard from Suresh from Bancorp every 6 months when we come to you with the Treasury strategy update. So we've worked with them to make a few recommendations and changes where appropriate. The changes are mainly reflective of the size of Council's balance sheet increasing so significantly in the last 3 years. It's also reflective of the state of the economy and specifically the interest rate environment as well. I've tabled a change which I think Sarah's handed out in Appendix 1, the ability to borrow fixed rate debt had been reduced from 15 to 10 years, but that should not have changed, so I've left that at 15 years. So there's a track change document that you should have, and that shows all the changes, including grammar and stuff like that. There's also some key changes that I'm happy to talk through the reasoning behind those changes now, or I can just assume take it as read and take any questions.
Hey, thank you. I'll open up. Yeah, I've got a question, but I'll open up questions first from the floor. Bruce.
Look, mine's out of pure ignorance, to be honest. I'm comfortable with the general changes, and I realise it's to enable keeping our policy relevant, and indeed your tabled item deals is probably my key question, and that makes some sense to revert it back to that. Two questions. One of them's actually outside the policy and more relates to the procedures. But the first one was on section 8, which was measuring Treasury performance. I just wonder if, and this is my ignorance, if I can quite understand actually how you do measure Treasury performance. That may not have been a question you were expecting. I'm happy to take that one offline. I'd just like to understand actually how we do that and when is that reported. So this is effectively trying to reflect that we are doing the right things and are on the right side of our interest rates. So I've been interested to understand, well, not exactly, but I've been interested to understand the core principles behind that, if that was possible. The other thing that I just wanted to check that actually associated with this is a series of procedures for the actual transactions and how they are pursued. I think I may have seen them before. And I just wanted to have a question, how often are our procedures reviewed either by internal audit or through some form of external review? Just as an add-on, if that's okay, Wayne.
I'll address the first question, which is on section 8, measuring Treasury performance. Are you talking specifically about the benchmarking part or just in general?
Probably actually asking in general for ignorance. What is the actual test?
So this one, this is a calculation that we use to benchmark our average cost of borrowing against the market, I suppose. And you can, this is reported up to SFR every quarter in the included in the financial results that Catherine and Tracy bring up. There's a Treasury section that includes our performance against benchmark. And I also include a graph and detail on this in my 6 monthly Treasury strategy updates, just to show how we align with measuring against the benchmark. I think it's for the previous financial year, current financial year, and forecasting into the next financial year.
So the external benchmark is the general market conditions, and our view is that we should be under that, correct? More or less?
That would be the aim, yes.
Which would be logical given we use LTFA funding. Yeah, okay, thank you.
In regards to the documentation that supports the transactions that we undertake, all of the process and the documentation was all set up by our previous treasurer, Mohan. We haven't changed how we do the documentation, but we could probably pull together to attach to the policy what that looks like for the different items, like our GFA borrowing, entering into a swap, entering into a term deposit. Those are probably our 3 key transactions that we undertake.
Yeah, sorry, I was being a wee bit naughty. I was trying to actually extend the discussion, Wayne, so the chair might want to correct me here. I was really just trying to reflect. There is a separate document, I presume, where we have the transactional procedures listed and documented as would be good practice. And my assumption is that they are occasionally subject to not, well, the procedures themselves, but actually there is a level of internal audit or external review of the entering and conduct of those transactions.
We do have internal documentation within the Treasury team to make sure that we're following those procedures and using the correct documentation. There's also levels of approval within the finance team to enter into those different transactions. But we can pull it all together into one place to make that very coherent for these kind of things.
If I could just add, those delegations that Sheree is referring to is part of Audit New Zealand's checks as well, in terms of what they will look at in terms of those controls are being met. So it's, whilst it's not a council approved procedure, those procedures exist and the documentation exists, and that is checked by the delegations as well.
Thanks, Paul. And look, I've been a wee bit naughty, as I said, extending the discussion to a broader area. That's fine, Paul and Sheree. I take it from where things are at that's okay. I just, I guess our transactions are relatively straightforward in the way that you've outlined. I just reflect treasury operations are one that are sometimes subject to separate review, sponsored by management and, dare I say, the risk committee, and I was just checking whether that has occurred.
Just to add, we also, like Bancorp, who are our external advisors, do review our policies as well on a regular basis, and we bring that to this committee as well.
Thank you, Wayne. Appreciate the chance.
Thank you, Bruce. Look, mine. I will ask my question now. It's just for clarity. So paragraph 17 of the report, borrowing resolution, and it really is just for clarity because what we've done in the past. Obviously, we're changing. I know it's only reporting requirements. And we're tidying that up, but can you just expand on that just a little bit more for my purpose, please?
The reasoning behind removing the requirement to present a separate borrowing resolution to council is really just to, like you said, simplify the reporting requirements. The borrowing for every year is set during an annual plan or long-term plan process. So what I'm proposing is just to include a resolution within the adoption of that annual plan or long-term plan report, just to simplify the need to write a separate report, really.
Thank you. I thought that might be what I thought I was missing something more than that, but then thank you. Thank you for the clarification. Okay.
Yeah, I'm happy to move the motions.
Thank you very much. A seconder, please. We have Stephen. Thank you. Okay. Any further discussions? If not, please. Okay, we've got a resolution there. We've got that the Strategy, Finance and Risk Committee, we receive the report, Treasury Policy Review, and B, adopt the amended Treasury Policy. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against? Okay, carried. Thank you very much. Moves us on to agenda item 9.3, and we have Main Streets monitoring reports for the period 1 January to 30 June 2023. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm pleased to present the Main Street 6 monthly reports for the period January to June 2023. I'll take my cover report as read and I'm happy to answer any questions on that. Aside from that, I have apologies from Ash at downtown Tauranga and Mahia at Greaton Village who are unable to be here to present today. But I'm really pleased to introduce our presenters today, Claudia from Mount Business Association, followed by Julia at Papamoa Unlimited. Thank you.
Kia ora. Claudia, welcome.
Thank you. We do have some slides somewhere. Not the video, just the, oh, that's Julia's. I wish I did a video. I can get started without it if you like, but it's okay. Yeah, cool. Tēnā tātou katoa. A major focus for us in the last 6 months has been developing our strategic plan. This was attached to our report. We held sessions with our board and one for our members to provide us with their ideas, feedback and direction they'd like to see the association head in the next 5 years. A lot of these things we already knew, but to have it confirmed and included in our strategic plan has been really important. The process was super beneficial for the association as this long-term direction was something we were lacking. We are now getting quarterly sales data thanks to Priority One and to Kendall for facilitating. I've got some graphs there and I've got a bit of just a reminder, but so we're just looking at the Blake Park, Tay Street North for our sales data. It's FPOS only, no online or cash sales. And our members cover 73% is 73% of our members is captured within that data, and 92% of those fit in the top 3 categories, which we're looking at in the total spend graph. On my slide, so if you go to slide 3, yeah, there. So 2023 is currently tracking similar to the previous year. So that's the red line that we're up to at the moment. We're looking forward to seeing the next quarter results. Just as the street has been quite quiet and the feedback from members, people have seemed to be feeling it a bit more. So it'll be interesting to see what June to August brings. Next slide. Looking at our top spend category, hospitality, this is tracking approximately 8% above the same period for 2022. So that's the green line versus the orange line. The blue line shows us the total for 2022, so we're over halfway there. Hopefully we've got a good lead into summer and we can surpass that. Just wanted to note, I've updated this graph with the current data available. Please disregard the one in my report, as there was just a few errors in that one. Next slide. Looking at local versus non-local spending trends, this is across all the categories in the amount. We're unable to separate them out. The cool thing for us to see here is that local spend for 2023, which is the red line, has increased from the same period in 2022, which is the blue line, while the average spend per transaction has only slightly increased by 26 cents to $35 per transaction. Next slide. As per my report, we've had some issues with the multimodal cameras staying online. We've had one camera operational since December 2022, so this camera can show us the trends across the street. We're seeing the big drop off in the winter period, probably steeper than expected, but this is good to get a real view. This aligns with the need to support promotional activities in low season, which we've included in our strategic plan. The camera team have been working to get the cameras back online, so hopefully we'll have more accurate data in the coming months. Next slide. In the last financial year, we set ourselves 3 KPIs. The first, increase member engagement. We quickly found out this is not going to be something we're able to achieve, tick off and move on. It's always going to be an ongoing focus for the association. While developing our strategic plan this year, we wanted to be able to track our progress and see what our current situation is and how we can improve. While looking at 4 key measures, we were able to put our current engagement rate at 19%, with a goal to increase this to 30% after year 1, all the way up to 85% in year 5. So it's going to be a work in progress for us on this one. The second KPI, effectively govern our organisation. Out of the 4 key measures we set, we achieved 3 of them, and the 4th, which was to have a full board, we only had 1 vacancy, which was one of our professional services seats. So we're really happy with this outcome. The third KPI, create a vibrant, inviting environment down the main street to drive an economic return. We held an average of 9 events throughout the year, estimating we brought in approximately 14,000 people. One of these events is our weekly Sunday market, so we had something on each week. Going forward, when we hold events, we'd love to be able to review the foot traffic data so we can see what the impact they have on the street. We've also been working on our online engagement and building our own customer database, which we recently launched our monthly e-newsletter to. Next slide. We are in the process of having our accounts audited ready for our AGM in October. We finished the year with a loss of approximately $50,000 down, which will be covered by our built-up funds. We had budgeted to spend $80,000 of our built-up funds, so we've come in under budget, and that spend was purely just a lack of resources to sort of get all those projects underway. We are rolling over approximately $200,000 to the current financial year, so the association is in a healthy financial position. Next slide. A recent concern of our members is the review of parking down the main street. I've met with Reece and he's happy to attend a members meeting to discuss it further for our members to provide their feedback to him. We'll also be conducting our own survey to get a good overview of our members' viewpoints on this matter. Initial discussions is that members are opposed to this change and feel it will have a negative impact on their business, given the free parking alternatives at Bayfair or the crossing. Street safety is still a high priority for our members, and it will be until things calm down locally and nationally. Our members are really engaging with our street safety WhatsApp group chat, and And I have to say, Paul Mason, who's here today, he's been a really big support to us in sort of connecting us with the police as well, and just supporting us through issues that we've been having. Last time we pitched the idea of some sort of ambassador or guardians in this space, and I understand that there is a feasibility work being done to look at this through Kendall and Paul. This is something we fully support and feel it will have a positive impact for our commercial centres. Next slide. We've got the return of cruise ships in October, so trying to improve our wayfinding from the ship to the street. A lot of them get lost. We're trying to build our landlord database by capturing this information through our membership forms. End of September, school holidays again, and we've got our ice rink in Port Takataka. We've got our AGM in October, which we're busy prepping for. We're planning for Christmas. We'll continue to advocate on Plan Change 33 and Mount Arataki Spatial Plan, and start on the Mount Parking Review. And it's fair to say everyone's looking forward to a much better summer this year, hopefully with less weather events to cause disruptions. Thanks for your time. Ngā mihi nui.
Kia ora, thank you. Thank you, Claudia. Yeah, lots of positive there in the report. Good to see, but look, I'll open up for questions. Has anyone got questions there, please? Stephen.
Thanks, Claudia. I got to say, from an association that was really struggling when we first came here as commissioners to the report that we've received today is a remarkable transformation. I think you're now setting the standard in terms of what we would hope all of the associations achieve over time. Your business plan, the use of data, clearly understanding your goals and objectives and monitoring that. I think it's an outstanding achievement. So congratulations to you and the association for what you've achieved. I particularly like the sales data that you're showing. As you know, it was one of the areas that I pushed on because at the end of the day, the performance of the team really comes down to whether or not their sales are increasing, hopefully over time. And then there's a whole bunch of other supporting data like pedestrian counts, etc., that all contribute to that. I really like the focus that you've put on understanding your members. It's very clear you understand who your members are, what their needs are, having gone through that consultation process. And you've set the KPI on member engagement. And I understand it's going to be a struggle, it always is. But actually having a clear understanding of what your members think about what you do is probably the most fundamental KPI. And you're onto that, which is great to see. I did have some questions though. You've relied fairly heavily on built-up funds, I note, and it's great that you had that pool of capital. What's the plan for when that runs out?
Yeah, so when we set our budgets, we try and everything that was sort of like, general operational sort of stuff, that has to go in our current year. The built-up funds is being used for long-term investment things or nice, things on top of that which aren't annual spend. So we're really conscious that with our current budget, we've got to be sustainable. And then those other things we can use if the project arises and we can complete it, then we can use that. Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense, sort of investing for the future. Yeah. I did notice that your audit fee was $9,000 in your report, which seems a very high amount. Now, I know that there were some issues with previous accounts. I presume the fee is based on tidying that up.
Yeah, so that's actually the previous year we didn't get charged for an audit, so that's 2 years in one. Yeah, so the estimated audit fee this year is about $5,200. Yeah.
More consistent with some of the other associations. And then on the question of, if I may, Chair, on the question of parking, which I know has been in the media, that I see as a concern to many of the businesses. And obviously we're just at the start of a conversation about this. And there are pros and cons of the various options. I think one of the things that appeals to me about the prospect of charging is turnover. And some of the reports that we've seen show that parkers in the Mount, and in fact in many of the retail areas across the city, come along and maybe park the car and spend the day at the beach, or they may be staff staying in a car park all day, which means that shoppers don't get to park and pop in and do their shopping and get away again. And if parks are occupied on a permanent basis, then you've got people touring around trying to find a park, which just adds to the congestion. So the primary driver really of the parking fees was to try to encourage greater turnover of existing car parks whilst also meeting the needs of staff, etc. Do you think that is understood within the retail community, or is more work to be done to really understand the balance of that debate, the pros and cons?
Yeah, and I totally understand the pros and cons as well. And I guess when you look at it during winter, you could park right outside the store. You know, there's no issues whatsoever. One of the questions we'll be asking in our survey is, like, do you provide staff car parking? Because a lot of, you know, the laneways, that's private land and that's staff car parking. So that will be something we're going to try and figure out is, you know, average, how many staff do you have coming in a day that are parking? Can you provide parking for all of those? So then we can kind of get the gauge on, if not, then where are they parking? Some communications will be going out to our members as well as just reminding them, you know, these are time limited parks and you can't park there. But I guess for us, we haven't really seen much enforcement of those time limits. So I think that's over time, people get complacent. So I think initially, before you go to paid parking, it would be good to see if some sort of enforcement on the actual time limits was put in place. Would that have an impact as well? Yeah.
Yeah, thanks very much. Appreciate that feedback. And I think the association could be very helpful in kind of having that conversation amongst the community. And I give the assurance that we are not in this for parking revenue. This is all about getting more efficient use of the limited street space that we've got. Thank you, Chair, for your indulgence.
Thank you, Steve. Margaret, and then Shad.
Thank you, Claudia, for your report. I'm probably going to come from a left field comment, and I'm in an organisation that's got to do with biosecurity, and there is an issue on Moa around myrtle rust, and we need to get that messaging out there in our community to let them know what's happening and the impacts of myrtle rust. So we might have to have a offline conversation, and we're having a wānanga next week on Wednesday that is open to the community to come and listen to some of the scientists. You coming? Bye, thank you. All right, so yeah, if we can follow this up later.
And we've obviously got our member emails, our customer database, as well as our social media. So happy to share that. Yeah, and I just wanted to thank Kendall. Obviously, she supports our role quite heavily in terms of getting that foot traffic data and the sales data, and also supporting us through sort of our documentation and stuff. So she's been a massive help.
Wonderful. You share.
Thanks, Claudia, for your report. It's always great to when you come in and report back in terms of how things have been tracking over the last 12 months. I do want to support Stephen's comments, just in terms of where you've come from and where you are now. And I really love looking through your strategic plan and the alignment between what you're seeking to achieve, but also you can kind of see the similarities, particularly from the city's strategic framework around protecting the environment, fueling possibility, and the vibrancy and inclusivity, which really align, I think, with the council's view around how the city grows and develops over time. Yeah, so it was a great read. It was, and I think too, just picking up on a couple of points that you've made, and also coming through in your report around strong governance and around strong engagement with your members. I think you can kind of see that if you've got really good governance and you've got really good engagement with your membership, that you're able to drive through some of these things that you're seeking to do, but also having good information, as Stephen's indicated. And I do have a broader question. I think I'll just signal it now for Kendall about P1 providing some of that data and information. Hopefully they're providing similar stats and information to the other main streets as well. Well, the question I kind of wanted to raise was around the spatial planning and the plan change 33. Council's doing a lot of work in trying to connect with the community and with yourselves around the way that the aspirations, I suppose, from a broader community perspective about the Mount and what we love about the Mount, what we want to see protected, but also opportunities for what the Mount could be potentially into the future. And then also Plan Change 33 about intensification. And you did note in your report that there were some concerns about coordination. I'd be interested in where some of those sticking points are in terms of how council's going about both those streams of work.
Yeah, sure. So with the Mount Taranaki spatial plan, we've been actually working quite closely with Carl on that. So we had like a very initial meeting before it started. We held a members session so that they can come and provide their feedback. Low attendance from our members, which was unfortunate. We've also been engaged with the key stakeholder workshops that they've been having. And then recently, last week, we actually just held another member event where the plan, I guess, was discussed with them. So we had more people attending that. So I think that process has been good. Kate, our chair, has been taking the lead on the plan change just because that's her sort of forte. And the Mount Business Association, we've been going through the hearings at the moment, submitting on those. So yeah, I think we've been fully engaged. I think it's just trying to get the word out to our members so that they can also submit on, on the submissions and the public feedback that's come through, which, has been quite hard. You can tell them, and then the information comes out, and then they wonder how they can provide feedback. So, yeah.
Thank you. I think probably the challenge is, these are sometimes quite prescribed processes, and if you're not in at the beginning, it's really challenging to get involved, once you hear about all of these changes. So it is the nature of, I think, in terms of these processes that we're going through, that people start reacting when they see they can't get into the process, which is unfortunate. But hopefully, on behalf of your membership, be able to advocate for your membership through that process as well. Yeah, I think that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Shat. That's great. Bill, you've got a question.
Thanks, Chair. I've just got a comment first, and I presume, Claudia, you've raised with Kendall regarding the matter around the enforcement of the current time-limited car parking. So just noting that.
Yeah, that's we had when I had my first meeting with Reece. That was something we discussed.
Okay.
Yeah.
My question relates to, you highlighted in your presentation wayfinding, particularly in terms of during the cruise ship season. But from memory, we've had that issue raised with us previously. So I just wanted, if you could tease out what the thinking is around that potential wayfinding and connection of those cruise ship passengers into the downtown area.
One thing that we're looking at, and Kendall's been sort of trying to connect me with the right people, is when they come out of the port, there's a street pole with, like the finger signs on it. So the association would sort of get some of those yellow ones that can kind of direct people. So now it's just a matter of mapping out what we want and where we want them, and then getting that plan approved. Yeah. So just more those sort of touristy focus, sort of like finger signs on the power poles or the signposts. Yeah.
Just hopefully it happens relatively quickly, given the impending cruise ship season is, close to being upon us.
That's all the questions. You've had a few, so well done. Well done, you. Thank you. Thanks, Claudia. Julia, is it? Here we go. Welcome. No, you.
Morning, everyone. I'm Julia Manxlow, the Event and Marketing Manager for Papamoa Unlimited. Thank you for having me here this morning. My presentation's a little bit more interactive, so if we could start with my video and I'll talk to my points in the slide. Technology.
This usually only happens when I'm in charge of IT, so.
You're not alone. Is the sound accompanying? I could sing with it. No.
We can hear it, it's just not loud.
The sound doesn't matter. It's okay.
Are you able to talk through, hopefully if the video plays, yeah, and just report, just present, and looks great.
Awesome. So this is a
Yep,
snapshot
thank
of what we've been up to Papamoa. Over the past 6 months, we've had the Papamoa Sand Parade, Manawatia Amatariki, which was our Light Up the Stormwater Trail. This video talks to collaboration, which was one of the points that we discussed in our last catch up when I was present, which we're very fortunate to be able to work with the other town centres for Papamoa to be able to afford, to be able to create this kind of collateral. So we'd made this especially to show you sort of where we've been able to go. If you fast forward my slides start.
I think there might be a lag in the Wi-Fi due to the number of people probably logged in.
So logins. All right, so I took to, yeah, perfect. So if we start from here. All right, so KPIs for us last time that we met with you, we had 3 KPIs that we had set. The first being to deliver 3 to 4 events annually to promote Papamoa Unlimited as a destination for locals and tourists alike, which I feel we have successfully done over the past 12 months. We've had the 4 events, Peel and Pump Papamoa, which has an Easter Alice in Wonderland trail. We have the Papamoa Sand Parade, the Manawatia Matariki Light Up the Stormwater Trail, and Pedal Papamoa, Pedal and Papamoa Halloween, which is coming up shortly. To build on turnout from previous events, Matariki in its first year held around 15,000. This year was over 30,000. It was absolutely mind-blowing. The Papamoa Santa Parade also grew in numbers from 25,000 to 30,000. We were one of the only Santa events along with Claudia in the Mount, but a lot of events had pulled out in the whole Bay of Plenty due to weather, but we managed to weather the storm and had our biggest number ever. It was absolutely incredible. To further promote Papamoa Unlimited to ensure transparency of information for eligible members. So that's something we're still consistently working on. You'll see later in my conversations that we're looking at membership databases, engagement, and strategic plans. So those are focuses of ours at the moment. Speaking to collaboration, so we managed to partner with the other 3 town centres to do a pro rata media partnership to promote the town centres together. We managed to deliver 17,669 unique page views with 3,257 clicks and 2 minutes, 28 seconds spent on our article. As mentioned before, having the assets like the video that I was trying to play for you, which you'll have a copy of, being able to unite and do that together really put our best foot forward as Tauranga City, as a destination to not just live, play and stay in, but to visit. And the engagement was exceptional for all of us. The Mount had 1,100 clicks on their video, and Papamoa, we've never had assets like that ever before. So moving more into that, promoting people to the destination. So Obviously Christmas, so the Santa Parade, we had 30,000 people there, smaller in numbers of floats due to timing, so we won't be doing the week before Christmas ever again. But the crowd was just phenomenal, lots of smiles, and again, one of the only Christmas events in the entire Bay of Plenty. That morning we woke up to rain at 5 a.m, but managed to hold out till 8 a.m and decide to proceed ahead. So Pedal and Pump Papamoa, so Alice and Wonderland Easter Trail, another one of our events. We managed to work closer with local businesses, Mitre 10 Helping Hands, the Papamoa senior rugby team were able to create interactive elements out there. This would be one of our most cost-effective events that we do through the year. Weaving the strands, so one of our central pillars of focus with Papamoa is weaving the strands with iwi. We've created a beautiful partnership with Ngā Pōtiki Tamapahori, and I'm really excited to see where that goes in the future with Manawatū Matariki. So our big one, Light Up the Waterway, we managed to get TV1 breakfast interviews, Radio New Zealand interviews. We were right through the media. Over 30,000 people attended. It was absolutely not the crowd we expected, and we were amazed with it. Matariki in its first year, the traffic in the plaza was up 45.70%. On the year, this year, we were 10,608, up 6% on the year before. The plaza almost couldn't handle the amount of people in the plaza. It was full stock, and just the entire waterway was humming all night. Our goal is to make this a national event for the Tauranga region, with big plans and the pipelines focusing on key stakeholders. And we're going to need lots of funding because I've spent a lot of mine. So we will definitely be making a lot of friends this year. Next stop for Papamoa is Pedal and Pump coming up on the 29th of October. Again, one of our more cost-effective budget-setting events. Slide's gone off for me. Papamoa Santa Parade, so we have a fairy tale Christmas on Sunday the 10th of December with 45 entrants already, 3 months out, so we're expecting big numbers again. It's really become an iconic event for Papamoa, and I think as we grow at the rate that we are, it's just really exciting to see the engagement out there with local businesses. Database creation and engagement, I think that's somewhere that we fall behind the other town centres. It's not something we've ever had budget or scope for, but it's something we're very dedicated to do. We love Papamoa, and it just, as I said, there's so much great things happening out there for us. Strengthening key stakeholder relationships, gaining funding will be my number one thing for the rest of the year, and developing partnerships that nurture our backyard and help us progress ahead. Strategic plan is also something we're really excited to get our teeth into. It's not something we've ever had before, and I think, as I mentioned before, with the rapid growth out there, I think it's the perfect time for us to sort of sit down, have a look at where we're heading and what we want to achieve, and what these events that we have for our stakeholders are doing. Are they giving them the returns that they want, or do we need to pivot to do other things? So things like websites, etc., are things in our pipeline. One of the key focuses for myself as well is I want to increase the ratepayer zone to Te Tumu. Papamoa is not Domain Road as it was in 2014 when Papamoa Unlimited was established. It goes right the way down, and I think that's really important for us to look at that scope. So Kendall has been amazing, and we're working through ballads and how we tackle that beast. It doesn't exist for Tauranga City Council, but other councils have done this process before. I think with the new establishments coming down the road, the possibilities for Papamoa are infinite. So yes, that's Papamoa. That's what we've been up to. Thank you for having me. I'm sure you've got lots of questions on data.
I think we have, but yeah, kia ora, Jelly. That was a wonderful presentation. Thank you, albeit the video made it challenging, but thank you so much. Look, I'll open up for questions if someone, Bill, to lead, please.
Thanks, Chair. And certainly, Julia, just like to acknowledge again, and I suppose it's a similar theme to Stephen outlined with Downtown Mount. Really pleased in terms of where the Papamoa Unlimited have got to and are heading. And I think part of that is just acknowledging the work in that you're doing in that partnership space, and the need to have others in the tent. And that seems to be obviously paying dividends in terms of the support that you're getting in that space. I'd just like to also acknowledge that lighting up the waterways, because was the first of that last year or the year before?
Last year.
Yeah.
Yes.
And just now, in terms of that connection with Matariki and I think the future scope of that particular initiative and being somewhat unique. So really hats off to your organisation and the others involved in actually seeing the potential and actually growing that particular event. A question around that, and we've had a bit of involvement over the last 2.5 years in terms of the waterways and all of that. I was just interested in the reaction from locals and those who have properties on the waterways to that particular event.
Yes, you did set me up last year. I think what was really cool last year when I walked the entire waterway and visited all the residences, I got really great feedback. You know, they were a little bit upset about the native trees, but it was a great way to be able to, you know, I suppose weave the strands again and sort of settle the dust before we put the trees in. They absolutely loved the event and they were blown away. A bit nervous last year, I think for them security was one of the things as well. So we really ramped it up around security, around road safety. The feedback we've had has been it's the best feedback we've ever had. I've probably had about 10,000 comments come through about how proud, not just the waterway residents, but the community was as well to have had that represented from our backyard.
Thank you. Second question, in terms of slides gone, but increasing, I think you used that, increasing the ratepayer base, for the want of a better word. I presume that work's been done with a view to potentially increasing the area through the next LTP process. Is that correct?
I'm not sure about the LTP process. So Kendall and I have been looking at how you establish that ballot. It doesn't exist in Tauranga City Council right now. It has happened in other town centres.
Okay.
But it would definitely make sense to combine us. We are Papamoa, whether we're east or the centre.
Okay, thank you. And my third question, again, just flicking back to your lighting up the waterways and the Matariki event, you're looking at for next year,
Yes.
substantial funding. Really understanding your level of confidence of achieving that, and what happens if you're unable to do that in terms
I will
of the
definitely
event.
get it. I'm a very dedicated person, and I think that the support out there in the business community is huge. So people are excited. We've got people coming to us already, but at Papamoa, we have actually never applied for any of your funding. So for us, it's tapping into that. We've got TECT, we've got the National Manawatia Matariki Fund, working with iwi who want to partner with us long term. So you've got to crawl before you walk, and now we're running. And I think that the appetite out there is huge, and that people really enjoyed the educational process, and that falls in line with a lot of brands in this region.
Thank you. Rohario and then Shad. Yep.
Kia ora, Julia. Thank you so much for your report. And while we didn't have sound, I really loved your video. I'm a real visual person, and it's good to hear that there is some sharing of ideas and collaboration with some of the other main streets as well in terms of how to visually present your information. It looks great. Mine's broadly a comment and then maybe a question near the end. But just like Bill, it's really good to see that you're partnering with our local hapu and iwi, especially Ngā Pōtiki, and it's good to see Matariki as one of those events. And as much as I love Disney and fairy tales and Christmas, just wondering what your aspirations are in the future, looking at some of our Māori history, because out at Papamoa, it is very rich in history out there, and really letting the residents and businesses know about the area that they are in. And I suppose that will come in time with those long-term partnership plans that you just mentioned earlier. In terms of lining up the waterways, that looked amazing, and I think you've already kind of answered my question that I had, which last time it was presented, there was concerns about safety and the amount of people that arrived, and just wondering if you did put together the necessary precautions this time around to cater for, te nui me te rahi, like everybody who came en masse to that event. And yeah, and then just one more plug. It was great to see Mr. G's video in there. He's a Papamoa resident, a really well-known artist, and he's always promoting Papamoa every time I look at his stuff. So just a plug there. He's my cousin. So
he's awesome. Thank you. Thank you for your question. I think for me last year, infrastructure was big, right? We didn't expect 15,000. We were prepared for big numbers, and 30,000 was a delightful surprise as well. And I think for us, security was one of the main things. We had the entire rugby team. They've been great this year. We've been hustling them hard. But I think having them out there as faces of the event and being able to guide the elderly. Myself, I walked several rounds around with elderly as well that lived on the Stormwater Trail. But I think, looking at security, having more lighting out there as well for the security team. I think each year that you hold, this is now a major event. Each time you hold an event, you learn and you grow, and I think there's definitely room to grow further. I think for me, I would like to ask the question around infrastructure too. How much weight can those bridges hold, which was asked beforehand, but when you have those high fluxes, is there things that we can do to actually make it more structurally sound out there? And for next year, being that we're moving towards a national event, it's we'll use more of the waterway. So going further down it, so to be able to gape it out and not have those condensed moments. This year was a lot more fluid than last year. We had it in and out. It was a loop. It was really smooth. I think that was a huge learning from last year. But looking at infrastructure, how do we make it as safe and as fun for everyone?
Well, thank you. Shad.
Thanks, Chair. I don't really have a question. I just had a couple of comments to make as well, similar to everybody else. Just really appreciative of the work that you guys do in Papamoa and the events that you've put on. And I think probably thinking through the partnerships. I mean, you've got in terms of your funding, particularly for some of your events. So whether that's with Ngā Pōtiki or the Philanthropics or Crown or us, all supporting the business opportunities in and around your membership. And I think probably one of the key things for me, and probably similar to the other conversations with the other main streets, is actually your members seeing the benefits of what you do. With the mall being packed out, I mean, if you've got 30,000 people in and around those events, there are wider benefits to your membership. And I think it's promoting those benefits and what that delivers for your membership, that they actually see value in what you do and bringing people and attracting business essentially to that community. So I do want to acknowledge all of the work that you do and the benefits that you bring, not just to Papamoa, but actually it grows into the waterways, into that into the wider community. So great.
Well, thank you, Shad. Oh, Stephen, question?
I totally echo Shad's comments, and if the Mount are an exemplar of good strategy and good planning and use of data, you are the exemplar of great events and great initiatives across the community you serve, and in fact the whole city, going along and enjoying and participating in those fantastic events that you're putting on. And really just reinforcing what you already know, if you're able to now round that out in terms of what your strategy is, and really engaging with the membership so that they truly appreciate actually what you're contributing. My wife and I own a business in Botany Town Centre in Auckland, a retail business. And if I had the level of support from the Main Street we don't have a Main Street equivalent up there. We rely on the malls marketing. Well, I tell you what, you guys are leaving the malls for dead. So keep it up.
Thank you.
Kia ora. Julia, well, thank you very much. You must be pleased with some really wonderful comments here. On mass, I don't have to elaborate anymore, but I do want to thank both you and Claudia for your presentations this morning. Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks. Okay, committee leader, Bill, happy to move, please, in a second. Yep, Rohario, thank you. So look, the motion is that we, as a committee, to receive the reports from Mount Business, Greaton Village, Papamoa and Main Street, Tauranga, please. So can all those in favour, please say aye. Those against? Carried. Thank you very much. Right, now look, move on to item 9.4, which is year 21 to 24 Waka Kotahi procedural audit, please.
Morena, I'll be just speaking on behalf of Nick. He sends his apologies. Just before the chaps walk us through the details, Waka Kotahi audits are typically run for a 3 to 4 year period. This one relates to 2021 to 2024. And during that time, what we've seen is a very large uptick in investment from Waka Kotahi and our infrastructure, our transport projects, looking back from 2021 to 24 have gone up as well. So Waka Kotahi have viewed TCC before that as a second tier partner. Now in that time, they're a first tier partner because of the level of work. And with that, the frequency and the nature of the audits change as well. So that risk is mirrored in this level of financial audit, which was the scope of this one.
Thank you. So just a slight correction. So the audit period was from 1 July 2019 through to 30th of June 2022. So it's a 4 year period. Typically we were on a 3 year cycle, but because of COVID, obviously the 3 year cycle didn't take place. So we went to a 4 year cycle. But as Alistair mentioned, now because of our expenditure level, we're deemed to be a tier 1 council. So it's every 2 years. The only council in the country that is every year is Auckland Transport. So we will be the same as Wellington, Auckland, Hamilton. So effectively a larger metropolitan council. In terms of the audit, it does look at both, well, effectively the audit is to ensure that we are correctly and astutely spending Waka Kotahi's funding. It looks at both our transport team, our finance and our procurement team. So it's a cross-council looking at our systems and processes. We also actually have a second audit undertaken again on about a 2 or 3 year cycle, which is our maintenance contract. So that was unfortunately done last year, but the key auditor actually left before the report was written up. And so that audit will now be done next month. I think the 3rd to the 7th of October is the next one. So in terms of this audit, staff had actually identified most of these issues that popped up. So we actually undertook 2 internal audits. We had KPMG come in and do some internal audits in advance. So there was no surprises. If the audit was actually done based on our current systems and processes as per point 3, you would see that most of those oranges are now green. So we had already rectified most of the issues, but unfortunately, because it was retrospective, of course, those issues weren't corrected at that time. That's it. So happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Questions, anyone? Chad.
Thanks, Brendan. Just a point of clarification in that table on para 3. So the rating assessment that was undertaken by Waka Kotahi through to April of this year, in terms of the current status, is that their assessment of rectifying all of those matters?
No, that's our assessment based on the criteria they use. So yeah, so this audit went through to 2022, so it doesn't cover the FY 23 and 24 years. So yeah, based on the assessment criteria they use and the systems and processes we've put in place, we're confident that we would be green based on that criteria.
And the next assessment for them would be when?
It's likely to be in 2024 or 5. Yeah, so late next year, early 25. There's always a lag between the financial year ending and the actual audit taking place.
So, I mean, we've been through a process of rectifying all of those matters, and then leading into the next audit, we would assume that would be all green, or hopefully, the next audit process.
Yes, that's our intent.
Sorry, I'd add that obviously I will be following up as audit and assurance to ensure that these are in place and hoping to get through that in November, I think, because we've got the procedural audit coming up. So, and we'll report back to you in the quarterly reporting at December.
And one of the things with these audits is they are very, very random. So we give Waka Kotahi a list of our projects and they randomly select them. So, you know, sometimes it is hard to control absolutely that everything's green, but with the systems and processes in place, they should be coming through as green.
Just a follow-up question. So, just thinking about this audit, I assume there was one prior to this one, and what did that one look like?
So I think from memory, there's been 3 audits. They were done before my time. So we have been consistently showing as significant improvement needed on a number of these areas. And I think that's part of the reason that we had KPMG go through and do 2 mock audits for us, just to identify, had we actually addressed those issues, had we not. So between their first and second audit, they'd seen a definite improvement in terms of our systems and processes. And the work we've done since then, we're confident that we've now addressed the issues that have been raised.
Shad, just if I indulge, because Bill's got a question, and then Bruce. But again, similarly, in terms of process, it is, it's very interesting. And I was going to sort of ask the same question. So in the past, because everything's subjective, we believe it's green, and then Waka Kotahi come in and assess it and audit and merit, and how often are we aligned and it's green? There's obviously room for error, but I think you just answered that. I just have to put it there. I find it very interesting. But Bill, you've got a question?
Thanks, Chair. It is pleasing to know we're probably not in terms of there's more audit requirements, but pleasing that we're in that major metro group, reflective of our capital investment. So from that perspective, that's great. In terms of then, is there any comparison undertaken or likely between that tier 1 grouping in terms of their audits, say between Tauranga and Hamilton or others who are in that grouping, just in terms of how others do in this particular area?
Within Waka Kotahi, there will definitely be a ranking. I'm not sure where we sit relative to where we were. I do know that based on the previous audit in 2019, we were very low in terms of our performance. They deemed us to be on their naughty boy list. So they are happy that they have seen an improvement from where we were in 2019 through. And that's good from our perspective, because it also placed some limitations around the flexibility in terms of procurement and the way that we were able to go to market for contracts. So we've seen a lot more flexibility since this audit's been completed. So I have to take that as a positive sign that they are happy we are progressing down the right pathway.
I suppose as a comment, Chair, it's always nice to know how we measure up and go against our peer group.
I guess, look, a comment I would make is, if we're tier 1, we should have a different relationship with Waka Kotahi. We should tell them that we're green. I don't think we should wait for the next audit. If we want to be treated seriously, we should provide them with a report that says we're now green and invite them to come. I don't think we should mess around. They're one of the critical funding relationships the city has We don't treat this as a bureaucracy or as an audit. We treat this as a partner needing to have confidence that we are tickety-boo. And I mean, I absolutely take on board the work you've done. This isn't good enough just to leave it sit on the table and the risk committee said, oh, this is okay. We need to tell them and get their sign off.
We could actually go back after we do our internal audit just to confirm that all of those matters have been addressed.
Thank you. I might sound a bit grumpy, but I'm not grumpy at you guys. I'm really trying to challenge us as a city. How do we treat our relationship with Waka Kotahi? And they're saying, albeit 5 years ago, we were low. We want to prove to them that we are the best.
Thank you, Bruce. We're going to put that as a resolution. I think we need to get the wording right. That's all. I think we should. Yeah.
I just think what I would say then be is that the committee recommends that council reports its updated assessment to Waka Kotahi to achieve their agreement, basically. So it's not particularly wordy, but sorry, not particularly good, buddy. But I think that's what I'd be after.
Yeah. Well, I think you said it with enough that it warrants that. But we'll sit on it. We'll ask some questions, and I'll bring it back at the end of this. I think Stephen, you've got a question.
Thank you. I really just wanted to reinforce Bruce's suggestion. I think it's an excellent one. And I think it will demonstrate proactivity not only to Waka Kotahi, but indeed when the commission was appointed, there was a lack of confidence in our contracting and project delivery capability. And I think that is reflected in the Waka Kotahi earlier analysis. And so what we need to continuously show, or to show continuous improvement, and you can see in the current status, assuming that it does meet the standard, and I take that as a given, that we are making really good progress, and that we should report that. And John, I'll be reliant on your internal rigor, if you like, around the process, that we can have confidence in making that report. So I think well done to the team for the update. That's the standard that we want to be within the organisation. It's clear we're getting there, and we should have continued the process to make sure we maintain that status.
Just to let you know too, we gave Waka Kotahi both of the KPMG audits. So when they were undertaking those, they were aware that if they looked at more recent years, they would definitely see an improvement on those earlier years. So yeah, as part of the audit, they got to see both KPMG audits.
Thank you, Stephen. Now we've got a question, and we can see your hand up online. Let's see if we can get some sound, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Anne.
Oh,
loud
sorry.
and clear.
Okay. Okay, look, first of all, I want to congratulate the team for getting us to this position, because it is pretty clear that we were, as an organisation, we were on the naughty boy list. I don't know why it's always boys, but we're on the naughty list. And so a lot of work's gone into getting us to this stage. So that's first. Secondly, I want to echo Bruce's comments, because as we go into these major projects, it is really important that we start reshaping that relationship with Waka Kotahi, who are going to be partnerships with us in, well, it's over $1 billion worth of projects over the next 5 to 10 years, and more than that if you count State Highway 29. So it is really important that Waka Kotahi, as Bruce says, sees us as a partner, and I think an important part of that is positioning as a result of this audit. So I'm happy to support Bruce's extra recommendation that we position ourselves with Waka Kotahi as an effective in all of those areas of the audit, but more importantly, as an effective partner in the processes going forward.
Okay, thank you, Anne. Okay, are there any further questions? I think we're going to have an attempt at the amended resolution. No further questions? Okay, let's hang tight. I think something's going to pop up for us to consider.
So wording's just coming.
Thank you. There we go. So that's it there. So the recommendation would be recommends to council that an updated assessment on the procedural audit be sent to Waka Kotahi following the internal audit. So that's the second part, because we've got a first part, isn't it, to receive the report?
And this would then be sent.
And this will be sent out to council. So, okay. And the first part is, so do you need some time to digest, or are we happy with that to see? Is someone willing to move and second this? Bruce to move and Stephen to second? Okay, so in two parts again. The first part is that this committee receives, now, for my own clarity, receives a report. In our notes, we've got year 2021 to 24. Is that to be corrected to 19 and 22? Or does it remain the same? As we have it in our pack, it's got year end 21 to 24 Waka Kotahi procedural audit. Can't be right.
Says 1 July 2019 to 30 June 22.
Yes.
Yeah, I'd recommend we change it to 19 to 22.
I agree. So, just to make sure everyone is clear, so this is for this committee to receive the report for year 2019 to 2022, Waka Kotahi procedural audit, and then we have a second part that recommends that council to update the assessment on the procedural audit to be sent to Waka Kotahi following the internal audit. So, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Thank you very much. Thank you. Right, that takes us on to item 9.5, please, which is Growth and Land Use Projects Progress Report.
Morena, you ready to go?
Yeah, welcome, Andy. Yeah, please.
Thank you, Wayne. What I'll do is I'll generally take the report and the appendix as read. I'll highlight just a couple of points in the cover report, but happy to take questions across the whole report, of course. But I'll firstly start with a few comments that sit outside the report. Firstly, and as I understand, the last time we did a quarterly update, which I was not present for, there were some questions around Maori housing, as there often are at this committee. And we undertook, I believe, to come back with some comments around that. There is, as you've probably read, nothing in the report around that. That work is being progressed largely separately to the work of the team through various smart growth work streams, through the housing system work, which is led by Western Bay, and through the Tangata Whenua spatial planning work streams. And as they report up, we can report those through the committee. Also, there is an item in the report on our future work program, and that will be reported up probably through the December committee meeting. That work program does include some Maori housing work streams, Papakainga work streams, as they impact on our city plan. And there are a number of other items in that work program that address resource management matters of interest to Tangata Whenua, around archaeological and cultural sites, for instance, and view shafts. And so I'm sure when that is reported up, we can have a much more robust discussion about those matters. Secondly, there has been some work done over the last week at relatively short notice, providing a staff submission to some consultation underway by Transpower and Powerco in relation to investment required in the local electricity network to support the city's ongoing urban and population growth, also the decarbonisation of the electricity or the energy system, which is leading to significant increase in electricity demand for things like electric vehicles. Through that consultation, they have identified that there will be significant additional load on the electricity network locally, and the network itself is under significant pressure at the moment, and significant investment is required prior to 2030 to continue to support the ongoing growth of the city. We have identified that that timeframe is pretty short for what will be quite substantive investment. So we've identified, I guess, a concern in that regard around the need to work and act quickly and decisively around those matters. We've also identified that they have correctly identified where our key growth areas are, out in the Tauranga area, out in Papamoa East, and through intensification. There might be some refinement to that. We've asked to sit down with them and work through those matters so we can ensure that we've got full alignment of our growth planning, also noting the sort of uncertainties and dynamic nature of that. Probably the other point we have raised, and through a number of their options, they are considering how they service particularly the large amount of growth out in the Tauranga area, and whether that happens through the current grid exit point at the Tauranga substation, which is located in Greerton on Cameron Road, or whether that can happen directly by building a new grid exit point out there in Tauranga. And I guess the key point that we have made is that we would like them to, I guess, minimise the impacts of further investment in Greerton, noting the impacts potentially of requiring more land in that area, given the adjoining green space and just the nature of that facility in an area where we're looking to intensify it. It's not necessarily conducive from an urban form or visual perspective, ideally, but it is obviously critical infrastructure for our city. So I do apologise that was not included in the report, and that submission has not been passed the council to approve. It is just one of a number of stages of engagement that is required through this process. So we, as the process continues, we will work a bit more in a timely manner to make sure that commentary can be approved by council in the appropriate manner. Getting back into this, in terms of the cover report, I do note the commentary and questions on the Mount Main Street item around Plan Change 33 and the various spatial planning exercises underway there. So I'll just highlight that matter, that we are very close now to having the substantive hearing on Plan Change 33, which commences in early October. And that will obviously address the various debates around intensification across the city, and including what we should be doing in and around that Mount Town Centre area. So that is going well. Our hearings report is now uploaded onto our website, all 600 plus pages of that, including appendices. So just acknowledging the work that Janine Speedy and her team have put into that. On the housing shortfall item, I just want to make it very clear that the housing shortfall we have in the city is not necessary, or is not only generated by decisions upcoming through our LTP and whether we can or cannot include capex for Tutumu and Keenan Road, but we also have already a substantive shortfall of roughly 5,000 houses in the city, and that was scheduled to grow significantly in any case, despite the timing of investment moving forward. So that is just to clarify that item. We, of course, have the upcoming smart growth strategy and future development strategy consultation commencing in the next few weeks. And the role of that strategy is to identify at a high level how those housing and business land shortfalls will be addressed. I just want to bring your attention quickly to the Western Corridor. We have the Kaingaora STP consultation underway. A range of open days have been held. I attended one on Saturday out at Tauranga. That was not too many of the public turned up on that beautiful sunny day, but we understand that in previous sessions, for example, out at the Paispa Hall, quite a lot of attention has been given to it. We have had some challenges around our Tauranga West plan change. They remain to be very similar to the challenges faced by the Tauranga Business Estate or the Hawiti private plan changes, particularly around stormwater management and flood risk. So we're just working through the details there and hoping that that will not result in a slippage to a February 2024 notification of our plan change, but there is some risk around that. We have an upcoming, I guess, critical decision point later this year ahead of notification based on procurement proceeding for the Te Reko enabling works and looking to award tender for that. So we will be reporting substantively at that point to council around the remaining risks and issues associated with that project. I will not talk through Te Tumu. There was substantive reporting on Te Tumu at the 11 September council meeting, but I do recognise that there's a number of tangata whenua reps around the table today who may have questions in regards to those matters. And just finally, I just do want to bring you back to the point I made at the start that we will be reporting up a future work program for your input late this year that will be focusing on district plan or city plan changes. And it is influenced quite heavily by the resource management reform, of which now we have legislation in place to substantively move away from the RMA to a new system, which is not particularly dissimilar, to be honest. But that is under significant doubt, I guess, depending on the outcomes of the upcoming election about whether that will proceed or go in a different direction. So our reporting in December will be able to build in probably a bit more of an informed view on the direction that will go. Happy to take questions.
Thank you, Andy. We'll throw it up for questions. Anne's got a question first, and then we'll throw it up, followed by Stephen. Thank you, Anne.
Thank you, Chair. No, I don't have a question. I just want to make an apology. I'm going to duck out now to another meeting, and I'll rejoin you probably after lunch.
Wonderful. Thank you. Lovely, Steve.
Thank you, Chair. Not so much a question, but a comment. I really do appreciate these reports, Andy, because they encapsulate in a series of tables an update right across the city in terms of the issues that we're facing and provide an amazing illustration of the complexity of process in trying to grow and develop and provide infrastructure for a city. And to that end, Chair, I think there's deep content in here that would be very relevant to a briefing for incoming ministers for the new government, just in terms of understanding the issues in real time that a council like ourselves are facing. Because I often think there's a misunderstanding that councils are trying to getting in the road of growth and enabling growth, whereas this report clearly shows we're doing everything we possibly can within the statutory construct that we've got to both fund and deliver on the needs of a growing city like Tauranga. And this report just sums up the level of complexity that process involves, and all ministers, particularly those in housing, transportation and infrastructure, need to be fully aware because we've got to simplify the system. And the current RMA reform that has now been enacted doesn't make it any easier. In fact, there's a range of statutes that don't talk well to one another. So I can see more complexity rather than less going forward. So really just to commend the team and make that suggestion that we provide real material and substance in the briefings to upcoming ministers.
Thank you, Stephen. Prudent comments. Thank you. Lovely. Bill.
Thanks, Chair. And just following up, first of all, in terms of support Stephen's suggestion, the challenge will be how we actually summarise and connect all that information together in terms of the briefing to ministers. But yes, certainly a great idea. In terms of Andy, just going back to Plan Change 33 and in that process, I just wanted some clarification in terms of submissions, because the traditional submission process, people outline the various matters, and you couldn't go beyond, and certainly the decision maker, what was in those submissions. Was there a change to allow an independent hearings panel to consider other matters other than just what was in the submissions? I just have something nagging at the back of my mind on that.
Bill, I believe you're correct. I'll have to come back to you with the detail around that, but I think there is some just slightly broader ambit for a hearings committee to consider matters.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this next one's a comment, and in the update talks about the urban design panel, and pleased the report's coming back at the end of this calendar year, and I presume that's, and it notes that it'll be the looking what's worked well and what could be improved, and I presume as part of that there will then be, if required, a suite of recommendations for any changes that the Commission might need to make to that initiative.
Yes, that's the intention.
Okay, no, thank you. That was all. Great report, because it is a mine of information.
Great, Bill. Thank you. Shared.
Thanks, Andy. Just a comment, I suppose. I've probably got a question here somewhere. Looking forward to the updated program about plan changes, because I think when we first were appointed and given the uncertainty about reform, suggested priority plan changes. So now that we've hopefully got more clarity, can start progressing some of that work. But then also thinking about the work that we are doing in the spatial planning at the Mount, and also the Mount Industrial work program. And I think from a Commission point of view, we had talked about whether that could be one of those priority areas that we focus on from a plan change perspective. Is that still the thinking?
I think, and with the timing of reporting up, we're conscious that the Mount spatial planning exercises, including the industrial area, will be being completed at the similar time, and that provides that opportunity to align what's coming out of that into what might happen moving forward in terms of our work program. So yes.
That's great, and support Stephen's comments about bringing all of this information in front of us, because it, to be able to think about what we are doing right across the city, whether it's from a Māori housing perspective or some of our priority development areas, using the tools like the SDP and others right across the city, and trying to look well in advance, but also some of the challenges that are in front of us. But yeah, just really want to thank the team for pulling the report together, and I'm happy to move the report.
Okay, when the time comes, thank you. Bill.
Kia ora, Wayne. Kia ora, Andy. I really just want to pick up the comment around while we're just receiving the report and the information that's provided in the report, and then going back to your first comment around Māori housing. I do really think though that we really need to have a picture around what Māori housing looks like within Tauranga City. So I don't think it's deferring. Well, TCC need to provide a picture around what does Māori housing look like So how many houses do we have on multiply owned Māori land? So when I look across from here over to Matapihi, we've done a lot of work and engagement with the Matapihi community. We've done a lot of engagement with Ngāti Hangarau, Wairua, around West Bethlehem. But what we don't have, or well, maybe you can tell me, whether we have information and data around what the current status is in terms of those Māori houses that sit within Tauranga City Council, because we've clearly got a lot of information around all of the priority development areas. And yeah, kei te pai tēnā, except Matapihi, Hangarau, Wairua, Welcome Bay, Kairua Road, Taranaki Lane, Ohauiti, North and stuff, actually sit outside of the areas that are being reported here in the report. And so for us to have a good idea around, well, what is the investment required into Māori housing, we need to know what is the current status. And so from my point of view, Andy, we've got 600 hectares of multi-plan Māori land. 200 hectares of that is contained within Te Tumu. What's happening with the others? And we've got a good policy around supporting the development on Papakainga through our community housing policy and provision. But how far is that going if we don't know how far we've got to go? Clearly there is a Māori housing crisis, because we only have to go around to the 7 rural marae that sit within Tauranga City Council. They make up 150 hectares of land according to the stats that we've got. The 4 urban marae probably have limited capacity to support Papakainga, but they'd concentrate on providing kaumātua housing. And I think it's that type of picture that we need to assist us in moving forward. I think the basic stats that any council should be able to produce around how many houses have we got on multi-land Māori land.
So that's not particularly difficult information to, I'm sure we've got that. We can bring that and we can present that, including information around consent applications that we might have to increase the number of Māori houses. We are working closely with the various trusts, iwi and hapu, around what their future plans are. But, there's obviously future plans, but uncertainty about bringing necessarily those plans forward. How do you deliver them? I understand in terms of our Papakainga kind of DC funding, DC fund, that it is not well subscribed, which probably indicates that not a whole lot of Papakainga housing is actually being delivered. Obviously, that funding still sits there for when it will occur, but it's probably a good indicator that we're not seeing the delivery on the ground that we'd all like to see. But yeah, better understanding your request now, and we can bring some information back.
Thanks, Andy. So, yeah, I think, just like we've got a section that's there on Marawaiwai, on Te Tumu, if we had a section on there around Māori housing and reported it back on, then we've consistently got that information coming forward. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Yeah, that'd be a great start, Andy. Again, information, data, and then it might get things moving like the Papakainga Fund, so it would be much appreciated. Thank you. Roharu.
Kia ora, Andy. Yeah, I just wanted to tautoko Te Pio's comments there. And I take your point that you mentioned earlier that Māori housing and Māori land will be reported up through other avenues. But I think Te Pio did mention it's really about seeing it here as well within this report here that you're giving, because that gives us sitting here a more thorough understanding of everything that's happening within the Tauranga region. So yeah, just tautoko your point, Te Pio. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Thank you, Andy,
Last
for your
meeting.
report. But just quickly, I think just following on from Te Pure's comments is probably around is what infrastructure, what services is available to Māori land, what should also be included in that table as well. Kia ora.
Good. Lots of questions. Any more? Okay, thank you. Now we have a mover, Shad, a second, it was Bill. So that is to receive the growth and land use projects progress report to September 2023. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against? That is carried. Thank you very much. Okay, yeah, please. Yeah. Sorry, just a wee kōrero, whether or not we broke now or a little bit later, so we shall just keep going, I think. One more at least, which then, now I am lost. We are 9.6, which, there it is there. Thank you. On to item 9.6, which is adopt draft traffic and parking bylaw, please.
Tēnā koutou. I'll try and keep this brief so everyone can go to their break. This is just a follow-on report from a report you received in June around our traffic and parking bylaw, which is due for its statutory review. There were a couple of items in June that you agreed to in terms of future-proofing the bylaw for the next decade. So that was to update some legislative references that had changed in the interim, to clarify that secondary vehicle crossings require council permission, and to include an option in the bylaw that the council could use in future to require people to register to use a parking space, which would enable us to better monitor time-limited parking or incremental parking charges. So that's it in a nutshell.
It is read. We've read the report, so I'll open up for questions, please. Might be hungry. I think they're very hungry. There's nothing. They're making.
I'm fine with that.
Bill. No? Oh, move a second. Okay, there we go. You get good thing. Shared question, is it? A second.
I'm happy to second, but I've just got a question. So
lovely.
So this initiates the consultation process. So we will be out talking to the community about these.
Correct, yes. So it'll be a
amendments,
special
changes.
consultative procedure, planning to have that late September or early October for the community. So yes, and attached is the statement of proposal, which will go on the website along with our standard consultation material.
And that'll give the community a chance to provide their feedback if they've got any feedback on those two. And we're not,
Absolutely.
you know, it is only on those two specific
So the
changes.
substantive part of the bylaw remains the same. We've assessed that it's doing what it needs to do, and so we're not proposing any changes there. So it's just the minor kind of amendments we're asking about.
Okay, if no further questions, thank you. Okay, that's good. So the motion is there that we receive, this committee receive this report, and there's and other parts there in the recommendations in our papers. So all those in favour, please say aye. Those against? Carried, thank you. Now we will.
Vicky's.
Oh, so you must, okay, continue on, please. Thank you.
The second
9.7,
item,
there we go.
hopefully equally as brief, maybe not. We've got the follow-on from the street use policy review. So last time we talked about some matters in terms of using the streets, such as street dining and balcony dining. At the time, there was a preference for options to come back for balcony dining. So we were proposing that it be charged the same as street dining. However, there was a preference to have some other options. So within the report, we've included some options such as the status quo, which is where we don't charge for more than 50% of the tables on the balcony, or to not charge for balconies, or to charge a percentage of the applicable street rate, which is our recommendation. And we recommended a 75% charge just to reflect that balcony dining has some capital costs associated with it in order to put up a balcony. So potentially reducing that fee to recognise that, but happy to take any other direction on that.
So, thank you again. Open for questions. We've got a couple there. Bruce, please, followed by Stephen.
The matter of clarity for me with the policy, a lease to of airspace. How long is that lease for?
So at the moment, the policy has a 20-year period.
Oh, right.
However, at that point, it could be reviewed and then.
No, look, that's fine. I was just wondering whether that should be consistent with the planned life of the building, but I take your point that it probably needs to be at that level. I must confess, I must have read the draft policy too quick. I couldn't quite find out that time. So thank you. 20 years makes sense. Thanks, Wayne.
Thank you, Chair. Can you just remind me how the street parking itself is valued?
Sorry, the street dining.
Sorry.
Sorry, that's the second part of the report, is around how we do the transition to street dining. So we're proposing an approach whereby it's set by user fees and charges. And so the second part of the report talks about how we would transition to that approach and what we would use to inform how to set that rate. And so we're suggesting that we would look at the footfall data, the retail spend, related property lease information, what other councils are charging, and also what we charge for other forms of council land, such as kind of fees and reserves and that sort of space. So eventually getting to a point where it would be commensurate with other councils' rates, what we charge on use of council land, but we're proposing that we go through a process to kind of transition in those charges, especially given the level of kind of construction undertaken in the city centre at the moment. So the second part of the paper, talks to how we would look at the economic context at the time, do phased increases each year through the user fees and charges, working out what's appropriate, and try and link it into kind of community value. So when we start to see some of those projects come online and see some of that development kind of change the nature of the city, trying to link into those periods where it's more appropriate, I guess, to start charging a higher fee.
Thank you, Chair. That certainly helps me understand the context of the 75%. And on that basis, I mean, it sounds like a balanced approach to a whole range of factors that would set that price. So on that basis, I'm happy to move the recommendations, Chair.
Stephen, it's Bill to second. Do we have any other questions for Hario?
Not a question, but a comment, because I know that I asked a lot of questions last time about balcony dining, and so it's really great reading your report back here. And so 75% recommended option, it'll still go out for consultation and then we'll hear feedback. But
absolutely,
okay.
Yeah. And again, the whole policy itself is going out for feedback, so we'll be looking for the main streets, for businesses to feed into both the street dining and the balcony dining aspect.
All right, thank you.
Out of interest, could I just ask, do we have any leases for subsoil? That was a really interesting.
We do. We have two.
We have two. Okay,
yeah.
I don't know the commercial ranges. Doesn't matter, but I was just intrigued to know whether we lease any of our subsoil out. That's interesting.
Okay. Any further questions? Okay, we have a mover, and Stephen, and a second, and Bill. So it's for this committee to receive the report and the recommendations noted. So all those in favour, please say aye. Those against? That's carried. Thank you again. Thank you very much. Okay, this is where we do get a break. So, yeah, 10-minute break. Is that all right? 10, 15 minutes? 10. Okay, thank you. 10-minute break. Kia ora. All in favour, please say aye. Those against, that is carried, the slight amended resolution. Thank you very much. Now we go 9.8, which is adopt a draft gambling venues policy for consultation. Thank you.
Oh, kia ora tātou. I'll just give a quick introduction to this paper, and the team are here that can answer any questions that you have. At your March meeting, you requested a review of the relocation criteria in our gambling venues policy. The current policy doesn't actually permit any new venues, that's that sinking lid, but it also only allows really specific relocation in certain circumstances, and it means that venues can't move from areas of current high deprivation into growth areas. We've put 3 options into that paper based on some feedback that the team have done across the community. The first is to keep that existing criteria that doesn't allow relocation except under exceptional circumstances, to amend relocation into permitted areas, and the third option is to not allow relocation at all. We have recommended the second option, just noting in the paper that about half of our venues are in high deprivation areas that we wouldn't have permitted if we were assessing those now, and there's no way of making those moves. So options 1 and 3 don't actually get those venues out of high deprivation areas. So we're just seeking approval for consultation on that, and also there's some updated maps that you will see in your appendix pack to make them, I think, venues understand their location and their location according to deprivation areas really clear, and we've updated those high deprivation areas based on the latest census data.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll open it up for questions. Oh, there we go, Bill. Thank you.
A question of clarification, Sarah. In terms of this proposed amendment, which is quite focused in terms of the relocation proposition, are submissions then constrained to only focus on that, or is it because of the mere fact we're going out with a change, or a potential change to the bylaw, or the policy rather, that it opens up all of the policy?
Kia ora. I'm Jen Ross, the author of this and policy advisor. It does have potential that we will receive submissions on the wider policy. However, our focus on the amendment is just on this area of the policy.
But we would be required to consider those submissions that may go beyond the proposed change in policy.
Yes, a full review of the policy was done last year, and it wasn't changed then. So while we consider those, it's not clear that we would have to make changes right now. It will be in the next review, which is a full review.
And probably just while I've got the floor, Chair, I do have concerns about using the deprivation index, and I expressed those concerns when we were considering the alcohol policy. My views to date in terms of the use of that haven't particularly changed. It puts in my view, there is this artificial construct. It doesn't stop people going to other places where that requirement doesn't apply. So I just needed to put that on the table in terms of my previous concern through the alcohol policy, but also in terms of this one also using that same index. Just as a comment, Chair.
Thank you, Bill. Noted. Thank you. Rohario.
Kia ora. Just looking at paragraph 24 of your report around the perceived conflict of interest, and I see that it's been stepped out as to what perception may be out there in the public. What What mitigation steps do you have in place for that perceived conflict of interest?
This is a conflict of interest that exists for the policy itself, and we just need to be really clear about where that revenue from gambling goes and how it's attributed to the community funding. So the managing of that risk is being really transparent about that relationship, and that will come through in particular when there's a full review in 2 years' time of the policy.
So being more proactive, upfront and transparent about that conflict. Okay, Kilda.
Any further questions? Oh, there we go, Bruce.
I was just thinking, sorry, about your very interesting legal question. Would we get broader submissions on something we're already or not wanting in effect advice on, and would we be obliged to take account of it as we reconsider the policy? Sarah, I'm just wondering, in light of, I mean, this is slow change. If somebody chooses to relocate, they can only go somewhere. And the social impact report says that actually there isn't, the so-called sinking lid. I think it's more like a cap, but the so-called sinking lid on hasn't changed either, other than a couple of venues going. Is there a need to do this consultation now? Or can it wait for 2 years? That's my point. Because I think I'm just thinking about your risk that all of a sudden we go through the whole round again. Given the social impact report and what it's saying, is there actually a need to make the amendment now? Can it wait for 2 years? Hope that doesn't exasperate you, Sarah. You're probably going to chuck a dart at me or something. But
I'll have a crack at answering that. It can wait 2 years, but we were asked to prepare it to go out for consultation now.
Well, I appreciate that, Marty, and I'm being a wee bit naughty and asking a slightly devil's advocate question now that I have had a chance to reflect on the policy we're at.
I think a question's been asked and I haven't heard an answer.
Well, no, I mean, we don't need to go out and consult now. But for one reason or another, there was a view that we should.
Perhaps just carry on from that, Chair, and hence my earlier question in terms of the scope of whether we are then ending up being obliged to consider all of the policy, because I think it might have been the Commission suggested just this small targeted amendment related to relocation. So the concern I have, though, is then are we opening it up to that wider issue, and then we ending up doing another more fully fledged review on the way through in terms of our obligation to consider all submissions and input. So that was.
We can manage that through the consultation process and be very clear that the amendments are in those track changes, and what we are seeking feedback on is the changing of that particular relocation section of the policy and the maps. And I think there is actually a real need to change those maps at the moment, because what we're hearing is that they're not making that much sense to users of the policy. But we can constrain feedback on those, and noting that if people have other comments that they would like to make, we will address those in the next full review that's in 2 years' time, and we can be clear about that if that's your direction.
Wayne, if I could just jump in, I think that was the middle ground, and I think you're right. And I just wonder whether the consultation document is, as you prepared it, is as specific as what you've just said. If we capture what you've just said, that removes that risk and then is in accord with the majority of where the Commission got to. Thank you for that, Sarah. Very helpful.
I'd be much happier.
Well, thank you, Bruce and Bill. Ruth, there's a lot of head nodding down the end there, so can I give you an opportunity to make comment? Because
my comment is that when we reviewed the policy a year ago, there was not a lot of feedback during that early engagement on it.
So the policy was adopted unchanged. So actually just before Christmas, when this first came up, I went back and read the feedback. And so organisations we approached, quite a few did not respond. How much interest in this there will be, it's hard to tell.
Maybe I shouldn't have opened up the floor. I think we just got told off. Okay. Further comments? Further questions?
No, I think that just really manages the risk around how much feedback we might get at this moment in time.
I think so. Yeah. I think it'd be definitely some feedback, I think, this time round. So, Stephen?
Chair, I'm happy to move the recommendations in support of option 2, and that the consultation document, when it does go out, is clear that we are only consulting on this particular question. And I think that will address the concerns that have been validly raised. It seems to me, in speaking in support of the recommendations, a sensible move that enables relocation to better markets, which will probably also meet consumer need more satisfactorily than continuing in an existing location. The existing rules are somewhat inflexible, and this provides a certain amount of flexibility while still keeping a cap, if not a sinking lid, in place.
Stephen, I noticed, Bill, I think you're willing to second that on the same. But Bruce, you comment?
I just I'll let Bill second, but I agree with what you said, Stephen, but I think, Sarah, you made an important point. If you have other views, let us know, but we'll consider them in 2 years' time. I think that's the other thing, so that we are crystal. It just helps cement and lock in what we are talking on. So thank you for that. Thanks. Thank you, Stephen.
And then Law Hardy.
Not so much on this policy, but thinking about all the policies we've just, we're moving through in consultation with the community. And then I think all of them have got some kind of hearing associated with them. I assume we're going to bring them all in. We're going to wrap them up into one process. We will have three hearings on the same day. And then the committee will go away and deliberate, whether we do that on the same day or at the subsequent meeting.
No, it's all one day apparently, and 13th of November.
Yep. Correct, the date's been set, and I think it's all in one big day.
Right, thank you.
Thanks, Shad.
Kia ora, just looking at the disadvantages of option 2 and really highlighting their iwi representatives, Ngai Tarangi and Ngāti Pukenga. Are you able to remind us what their feedback was around this option?
Yes, certainly. So, sorry, I've got notes. Yes, so essentially most of the feedback we had was similar from these groups, talking about wanting to support that sinking lid or even go harder and allow no relocation. So it was along that kind of side. And there was also an expression of interest and wish in being involved in the relocation procedure further down. That is a procedural matter rather than a policy level. And that would be looking at on a location by location basis as sort of would be relevant.
Just if it would help, Jen did prepare a document about the engagement. Would you like us to resend that to you?
Yeah, that would be good. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All done? Now, I think after all the discussion, we've got a slight amendment to the resolution again. So this is quite the day for it. We're going to pop it up on the screen, give everyone a chance to digest, make sure we've got it right. And I think it's to paragraph B, which approves option 2, amend the relocation criteria, enable gambling venues to relocate to alternative premises for any reason. I'll hold because to be honest. Okay. Shad?
Just in terms of, and I'll direct my question towards staff, that comment about any reason, I thought there was something about in the report about a specified reason, and so, you know, take the point about away from deprivation areas and that kind of thing. But not necessary for any reason.
So the current, the current policy has that there are set reasons that they could relocate under, and those are related to things like if the current venue becomes unavailable for some reason. Whereas they're wanting to be able to relocate even if their current venue still remains viable. So that's just one of the criteria. The second criteria is still that they have to move to somewhere that is of industrial, commercial, and higher deprivation, a couple hundred metres away from.
Sorry, just a supplementary question to that. I suppose in the back of my mind, I don't know how these processes work, but thinking through, you know, if you've got a license, you're operating in a particular area, and I don't know. I suppose I'm thinking through kind of are there ways in which operators may manipulate the system to, you know, I might need another 20 odd machines or that kind of thing. I'm just thinking through, are there ways to minimise any manipulation in those processes for operators gaming the system, so to speak?
Arguably, they would be more prone to manipulating the system currently with the criteria where they have to say, oh, we can't stay where we are, and come up with some reason which may not actually be wholly truthful, to then be able to move. Whereas if we take that criteria out, they're just able to move because they want to move. So I'd say in some ways it's less of a manipulation. The criteria for where they can relocate to is set and mappable. And though we have had issues with the clarity of those maps, that is something we're trying to address as well. So that should be resolved from that perspective.
I think, okay. Jero, can I ask Jeremy to make comment, please?
Just backtracking a few minutes, just to manage expectations of the committee. I've just been trawling through the Gambling Act and the link back to the Local Government Act. There is nothing which allows us to consult on part of a policy. So Sarah's tactical approach is what we'll probably need to have to do. But it does mean that if somebody raises an issue on clause 3 or clause 17, which isn't to do with this particular issue, we will have to address it through hearings and deliberations. So you may have to make a decision to make no decision, but we can't just ignore that stuff and say it's out of scope, because it's absolutely in scope, because we are consulting on the whole policy, albeit directing them to the bits in yellow on page 14 or whatever it's going to be. So just to manage that expectation, these things, if somebody comes to you and says you should abandon the whole policy or stick to a stinking lid or whatever, we will have to deal with it through deliberations. But one of the options will be make no decision now, reconsider in 2 years' time.
Okay. So on that understanding, are we happy with the resolution as it's amended? Okay. Now, from memory, I think we do have a mover and a seconder. Yes. Stephen and Bill. So I'm going to put it to the floor, please. Those who are in favour, say aye. Those against? Carried. Thank you very much. That was good. This is what it's all about. So great discussion. Thank you. Oh, here we go. So yeah, here we go. So, and we're also going to pivot now, please. This is for the committee members. So we are going to change the order of the agenda to here, item 9.9, draft revised community funding policy hearings report following the public excluded section of the meeting. So please can I have someone move that we do that? Bill, thank you. Shad, second. All those in favour say aye. Those against, so that is carried. Thank you. So we will now move into public excluded.
You need to move in.
I need to move. Here we go. Oh, well, that's right. Yep. Shad to move. Yep. Or Hardy or to second. Yep. And so we'll move in, please. So all those in favour to move in, please say aye. Against? Carried. We shall now move into public excluded.